How would it feel to be able to write your stories with less struggle, more ease, and greater creativity? That means spending a lot less time like this and a lot more time like this. I'm Nicole, and I help writers craft brilliant stories and share them with the world. And today's video is all about an approach to writing called mosaic method. It's really an approach that breaks down a draft into smaller pieces, and I can't wait to dig in. If you've tuned into my other videos about the creative process, you know that I refer to working from your intuition as catching snowflakes. Snowflakes are those little fragments of memory and ideas and dialogue and that dream that you had last night that you think somehow ties into your story and brings them together into the development of your first draft. I keep a notebook with me all the time to catch these story fragments with me, and I also use mind mapping as a tool to generate more inspiration, more ideas, more memories that I can weave into my story drafts. Those fragments become starting points for my story. I watch for the ones that seem to have more heat, more potential, and then I develop them further, and they become key scenes for my story that I will string together like beads on a chain. Some people call this approach to drafting stories mosaic method, and it's exactly what it sounds like. I'm building stories from tiny pieces and fragments, just like a mosaic is an image that's put together, made up of broken pieces of stone or glass. Mosaic method is perfect for writers who are feeling stuck and need a new way into their story, are struggling with something I call large-scale overwhelm, which is really common for writers of creative nonfiction, memoir, the personal essay, because our story has so many facets to it. It's memories and life-changing experiences sometimes. We have thoughts, we have feelings. There are missing pieces. It can be overwhelming to try and figure out how to really do a story justice and get everything that we want to say onto the page in a cohesive story. It's also perfect for certain writers who just think and write this way naturally. Writers who are highly sensitive, intuitive, creative. Some writers that have been through my programs and have neurodivergent minds have told me that this method just works for them. The reason I think mosaic method works so well is because it breaks a story down into small, manageable parts, into these pieces. And I think it nurtures creativity and innovation because it forces you to find a different way into your story. You're going to tell it not from where you've maybe verbally told the story before, where you think the beginning is and you keep moving through the story to the end. You're coming in at different entry points in time, different scenes. It's going to force you to look at things a different way. And I think that's really important for creativity. My high school art teacher used to tell us when we were stuck to turn our painting upside down because it would allow us to see it with fresh eyes. And I think that's what mosaic method also does for creative writers. It helps us to see our work from a different perspective, a different angle. If you've never tried mosaic method before, you may be wondering, how do I get from a bunch of collected fragments into something that actually resembles a story? What works for me is to find some kind of a structure that can hold the fragments. So I tend to write lyric essays, and the lyric essay is defined in different ways, but one of its key characteristics is that it's written in segments. It's a segmented story. So each of those segments can be a perfect container for one of the fragments that I've developed and written into a scene or a vignette. Lyric essays are also known as collage essays or mosaic essays. Typically, mosaic essays, collage essays, lyric essays don't follow a chronological timeline. This is one of the really fun things about them, is that your story can naturally jump backward and forward in time. This can be really liberating for your story, and what ends up holding this type of essay together in the absence of a linear sequential timeline is some kind of unifying theme. Untamed by Glennon Doyle is a mosaic memoir that is written in fragments. It's a great example of what this can look like as a long-form project. Now I'm going to show you a few more examples of what a mosaic essay can look like.
So this first example of a mosaic essay, it's written in the form of a list. It's also known as a list essay. I used mosaic method to write. It's called A Good Metaphor for Something, and this was published at Carte Blanche magazine online. And I just wanted to show you a couple of things here. First of all, how short some of these sections are, just a couple of sentences, and how playful you can be with this form. So as you can see, I added in some fun checklists. These scenes, moments, vignettes are jumping backward and forward in time. I used a definition here. This is a classic characteristic of a lyric essay, is to play with texts found from other types of literature or documents. And some of the sections run a little bit longer than others. They're a little bit more developed scenes, but some of these sections are actually just one sentence. And number 20 in this list essay of 35 points is just a musical note. I just had a lot of fun with this, even just kind of throwing secret thoughts in brackets. This is a longer section here. And yeah, so that's just one possibility of a type of mosaic essay or lyric essay, also known as a collage essay, is writing an essay in the form of a list. I'm going to show you a couple of other examples now. So this second essay written with mosaic method is called An Atmospheric Pressure. It's published online at Room magazine. And as you can see, this one has a little bit more of a predictable pattern. I actually intentionally messed around with time here, jumping forward and backward. So the first section is 24. It's a little mini scene. Then we go from the end of the story to the very beginning of the story, back to 23, forward to 2. So one of my friends called this a mixed time lapse essay, this form that I've sort of invented here as a type of lyric essay written with that mosaic style. So all of these little fragments taken together, each its own complete scene, tell a bigger story, a full story. Okay, so I've got one more example for you. So this third example is called Learning to See, and it was published at Puritan Magazine online. And this one, I really intentionally used the symbols of the asterisks, just two of them together, to separate the segments because I'm writing about myself and my friend. So the entire story written in these small little fragments strung together is about two people, this friendship of two. So this is another fun thing with lyric essays, essays written in mosaic method, is that since segmentation is important, you can kind of have fun with how you're going to separate those sections using meaningful symbols, numbers, sometimes just white space is used, but in this case, I was really intentional about emphasizing the number 2 because it's an important facet of this story. So again, some of these sections are maybe four lines, 4 sentences. Some of them are a little bit shorter, but it just shows you the variety that's possible when you're writing in this fragmented kind of format.
Here's a recap on how I use mosaic method to write a personal essay. Number 1, I catch the fragments, the snowflakes in my notebook, all of those little ideas related to my story that kind of give me a nudge and tell me they want to be written. Number 2, I would use mind mapping as a tool to generate more memories, more inspiration, make some connections between some of those fragments that have risen up to the surface. And number 3, I would develop those fragments into scenes and vignettes and then arrange them on the page in a draft like beads on a chain in a segmented essay format. I mentioned earlier that mosaic essays, collage essays, lyric essays do not need to proceed in a linear chronological format. So here's a tip for you. What I do recommend, since you don't have to start at the chronological beginning you need to find an opening that is really intriguing and some kind of closing scene or vignette that will leave readers feeling like there's an impact to the story. There's been a change, a powerful final image maybe. I hope my video today has shown you a new way of working and convinced you that it is a really ideal way to work creatively and with your intuition to write really original and innovative stories. And if you found this video helpful, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any more info that's going to help you become a better writer.